Hello and welcome to another stream, another English stream. My name is Chris and today it's all about globalization and international trade. Today we're gonna talk about globalization and international trade. Of course, in the English A-level exam, since we're preparing for the English A-level exam. Today's outline is actually a bit short, I'd say. But we start with an overview of the topic globalization and international trade. Then we're gonna discuss trade nowadays, followed by globalization and the effects on consumerism. Then we're gonna compare, what's up with the camera? Then we're gonna compare free trade versus protectionism. And then I'm gonna show you a demonstration exam, which is about fair trade. So let's jump into the overview of the topic. As always, you can find almost everything you have to know for this topic, globalization and international trade. You can find it in the book Berufsreifeprüfung für die Englisch für die Berufsreifeprüfung. You all know which book I mean. You should have it by now, and in this case you can find the information you have to know in the chapter Globalization and International Trade, which is on page 119, where you have to know, or you have to know basically now, after you acquired your knowledge about globalization and international trade, you should be able to define globalization, name the pros and cons, talk about free trade and what it's all about, talk about fair trade, for example, Fair Trade Foundation and the impact of fair trade. And with free trade, of course, you should be able to talk about international organizations and international trade. So if you wonder what fair trade is all about, I think it's not that well explained in the book. So just visit the website of fair trade, and then you're at this page, fair trade in Austria, and of course it's in German, but you'll get a good amount of information here. For example, in this case it's all about the farmers, small corporations that are organized in small corporations, or coffee, quinoa, what else, how to shop, the producers, how to support fair trade Austria, and so on and so on and so on. And that helps you to basically have a closer look into the topic and gain knowledge for this topic in order to successfully complete the oral exam. And of course you can do the same thing with every other subtopic, in this case fair trade, the international organizations that enable fair trade or enabled fair trade in the first place, globalizations, there are a lot of videos that explain how globalization works. There are a lot of books, a lot of articles. There is a lot of stuff out there that helps you to acquire knowledge about this topic. Having discussed the outline or the overview, we're now going to talk about trade nowadays. So, as we've all already know, or you might already know, trade has dramatically increased in the past 20 years. There is a lot of trade going on every day, every minute, actually, even now at the moment, at any given time, actually. There is some cargo ship sailing to another destination, or a plane flying to another destination, or a train, or a truck, or a bus, and so on and so on. There is a lot of transportation going on, and of course this transportation is caused by the growing demand of we, which means the people. So as I've already said, it's a 24/7 transportation. There are almost no limitation, although there are some in Austria with truck driving. It's not only in Austria, I think it's in the European Union, but only at weekends, on Sundays. So every minute, basically tens of thousands cargo ships move around the world. And the same goes with planes, not planes, planes and trucks. And why why are there a lot of cargo ships, for example? Of course, the cargo ships are mainly used to transport huge amount of containers, which contain different types of products, but also ore or oil, coal or gas, which is important for the industry. And without the industry, I just call it the industry, we wouldn't be able to consume that much, or in this case, consume every day what we want. There are a lot of commercial ships out there, and therefore that's also a cause for millions of tons of CO2 emission every day. So millions. That's a lot for a lot of CO2 emission, I think, and it's still growing. Transportation is still growing, and people are still demanding new products and faster delivery and so on. Of course, trade is fast. I've already mentioned it, pretty fast. And of course, it has a dramatic impact to our environment, not only because of the CO2 emissions. There is also a lot of trash. There is a lot of polluting the waters. There is even oil tankers that sometimes break down, and then they of course spread they leak, and then they spread the oil in the ocean. So that's a super intense catastrophe. We had that in the past, and it occurs almost twice a year, I'd say. So that's a real problem we're facing nowadays. And trade nowadays basically builds upon organizations and agreements that were made in the past, basically. Those organizations and agreements enable us to enable transportation faster, easier, and fairer. Also, to be fair and easier. I've already mentioned easier transportation. So now let's move on to the globalization and effects on consumerism. Of course, one effect is increasing sales. People buy more products. Everything is available 24/7. You can get everything within a short amount of time. And with this, also the consumerism changes. So for those of you who don't know it, consumerism is Konsumverhalten. So the whole attitude changes. You get used to it, that you get everything 24/7 and really fast. And then consumers tend also to buy more than they need, which can lead, of course, in some cases to debt. A drawback is that local stores are neglected because they can't make a product that cheap as can a well-known internet platform, for example. So they cannot compete with bigger international companies, which leads, unfortunately, to the downfall of a lot of local stores. And you have high expectations of fast delivery times, so you get used to it, and it is a pretty bad habit, actually. But that's how globalization affects consumerism. If you have, of course, other ideas, just write us and let us know, and we're gonna discuss it in the next stream. So, free trade versus protectionism. Free trade is basically where there are no tariffs for the goods that are transported from one to another country. And protectionism is basically what Trump now tries to do. So have high tariffs for imports, but not that high tariffs on exports from the US. And basically protectionism can have its benefits, but also its drawbacks. And for example, if we have protectionism, you have to import several products, since not every country has every resource available. So that's a big problem. And of course, the products get, I think, the products get more expensive, of course, whereas free trade enables us to import everything. But maybe, or not maybe, free trade harms smaller local companies, since they can't keep up with the big international players. So there are downsides of both free trade and protectionism, but I think free trade is some sort of better solution. So those definitions I've found in Britannica in this case. You can Google this website, or you just can read the definition here. However, I'm gonna quickly show you a demonstration exam of fair trade, which is here. So we're gonna skip the introduction. In the monologue, it's all about fair trade, and you have to talk about how fair trade works, what role consumers play, the positive impacts of fair trade. In this case, you're the manager of a well-known supermarket chain in Austria, and you try to convince your head buyer to enlarge the number of fair trade products in your assortment. A really good manager, I'd say. So after you finish the monologue, you carry on to the dialogue, and in this case, it's about child labor. The attached text, as always, is about child labor. Labor is never okay, but for multinationals, it is an outrage. If you have read the article, then you just discuss it and spice it up with your own knowledge, and then you're good to go, actually. And then, of course, the follow-up discussion where you're asked about the topic, international trade, and in this case, and globalization. Yeah. And I hope that you now know a lot more about this topic, globalization and international trade. And I wish you a very pleasant evening and see you next week.